I'm currently, and actually near the end of, rereading all of Cathy Glass's books in chronological order. And The Child Bride is one that I remembered so vividly, and it infuriated me so much when I read it the first time. Reading it the second time, that's still the case. The title kind of gives away a lot, to be perfectly honest, and I don't want to say too much more about that because I really don't want to spoil any more than the title does. But Cathy is looking after a 14-year-old girl called Zeena. She tells her school that she is being abused and wants to go into foster care, but doesn't really want to say much more than that. Indeed, she's too scared to say much more than that. But we realise that her father and her uncle are threatening her quite badly, and her mother has declared that she's brought shame on her family and refuses to let her see her younger brothers and sisters. And of course, Zeena is quite distraught. And we learn quite quickly that, aside from the abuse, Zeena also took on a very prominent role in her house, cooking, cleaning, getting the children ready for school. Her siblings are all quite a lot younger than she is, and it's almost like, I don't want to say it's like a holiday for her to go into care, but certainly it seems like it's the first time in her life where she's allowed to be a child and doesn't have to have all of these adult responsibilities. That in itself is quite eye opening, and Zeena quite openly talks a lot about a lot of things in Asian culture that those of us who are not part of Asian culture maybe not are not aware of, and certain differences in day-to-day life. But it also looks at some pretty harrowing things that have happened to her when she was younger, not just alluding to the title, but other things as well that have led her to where she is today. And I can't really talk too much more about that without spoiling anything, but I will just say expect the worst, and then it probably is even worse than that as well. And it's very shocking. In terms of how it's written, it's very well written. It reveals information at a steady pace, and then once Cena begins to open up, things start to drop a little bit more quickly, and the pace does pick up, and it gets a little bit more intense and a little bit more shocking with each chapter. Zeena is a lovely, lovely person, a lovely character, so it makes it even more difficult to read. But what's the most infuriating about it is the fact that these cultures still exist. It's great to have different cultures and different ways of life, but when it's this cruel and this horrible, this kind of thing shouldn't exist, and certainly you should not treat your daughter like this in Western society. And it just is so infuriating, and it just makes me wonder how many other girls like Zeena have suffered similar things and continue to suffer similar things. And it's just wonderful that Zeena was able to recognize that she couldn't cope with this anymore and asked for help. Because if she hadn't, I dread to think what her life would be like now. I won't say any more than that. But as I said, I remembered it very vividly the first time for very obvious reasons, that it's hard to read. Hard to read for the right reasons, because this is not what we expect to be the norm, and unfortunately for some people it is. It's definitely worth reading. It's quite different to a lot of Cathy Glass's other books. There's no, for example, well, actually there's not really any supervised contact. There's no trips to contact centres, meetings with parents. It is quite different. And also, reading it chronologically, I miss Jill. I really miss Jill. She's such a great character. We lose two characters actually in this book if we're thinking of them in terms of, a narrative, but for Cathy, of course, it's real life. Certainly recommend reading them chronologically if you can, but if not, I still recommend The Child Bride. It's very eye opening and definitely worth reading.